words, I'd like to invite Dr. Sushil Sharma, sir, to enlighten us on this key area in medical education. And participants and delegates, kindly submit your questions in the chat box. At the end of the talk, they'll be discussed. Welcome, sir. Over to Dr. Sushil Sharma, sir. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, sir, for that kind introduction. I hope I am audible and my
Yes,
screen
sir.
is
You're
visible,
audible,
sir.
sir. Yes, sir. Visible, sir. Yes, sir. Carry on, sir.
Yeah. First of all, let me thank SRM for this opportunity. The MEO of SRM, I think, is doing a tremendous work. And I have some colleagues here in AIMS Mangalgiri also who have such nice words to say about your institute and the great work you're doing. So, with those words, I wish to start my presentation here. Yeah, I would like to start my presentation by giving you a hypothetical scenario. Uh, Consider yourself as a new person who has just entered a new city. You are very new to the city. You are learning the routes. You don't know much about it. You don't know how big is the city. You don't know about the traffic. You do not know about a lot of things. And then you have to move from place A to place B. So what do you do? Because you are new in the city. And nowadays it is very, very simple. You get into your car, put on the GPS, enter the goal, enter the destination where you have to reach, and then start the car. Then what happens? The GPS guides you. It tells you how longer is going to take to reach your destination, how much time it is going to take, when you should take a left turn, when you should take a right turn, and if you have taken a wrong turn, it will tell you to take a u-turn. So it is actually telling you what to do, and that actually helps you a lot. And when you start doing that, slowly and slowly you reach your goal or you reach your destination. So what is actually happening here? Can I say that you are getting feedback? You're getting feedback as to where you're going. You're getting feedback as to whether you are going on the correct route, or the route is very heavily trafficated, or probably you've taken a wrong turn and then it tells you to take a u-turn. So without that feedback, possibly you may still reach your destination, but you may not reach also. You may take more time. You may get stuck somewhere. So this feedback, when you are new to a city, new to a place, help you reach your goal in a effective manner. So do you think that in our medical colleges, we have UG students, we have PG students, do you think they are new to this setup? Are they not learners? Do they not need feedback? Should we not tell them what they're doing well, what they're doing wrong, how they should do better? So obviously there is a requirement of feedback for our PGs and UGs also. Without that feedback, they might be lost. Like you'll be lost if the GPS does not give you feedback. Similarly, these students are also new in that setup. They do not know how to navigate the entire scenario, and if they don't get feedback, they is a real risk that they might get lost. With these few words, I wish to start my presentation on feedback in medical education and how can we make it effective. I will be focusing my talk only on the tips and strategies to make feedback more effective. I will not be dwelling upon the types of feedback and the various other theoretical aspects, but trying to focus on these important aspects of how to give an effective feedback. It was when I was making this presentation, it was quite surprising to me also that the term feedback was first coined by rocket engineers. When you have a rocket and you fire it, and the rocket has to reach a goal. So what do we do? When you fire it, you give information to that rocket about the speed in which it is going, what is the air temperature, what is the atmospheric pressure, and various other information. And that particular rocket takes that information, makes some minor changes, and then is able to reach the goal. So that word feedback has come from this particular scenario, and today we are using it not only in medical education but almost everywhere. Now, what is feedback? Feedback, NDA in is very famous article in 1983 presented feedback as a sort of information on observed performance with the purpose of guiding the learner's future performance. So you present information on what you observed, and you hope that this information will guide the learner's future performance so that they remain on course in reaching their goals. So think of the students also as a rocket. So they are going somewhere. You tell them this is how you are going, so that they are able to guide their future performance and they can be on course in reaching their goals. So if you have to give a feedback, you should have a current behavior. This is what is happening. You should have a clear model of the desired behavior. This is how it should be. So this is what is happening. This is how it should be. And this is the difference between the two. So that you know you have to cover this much area to go from the current behavior to the desired behavior. In 2002, Hesketh and Laidlaw, they presented feedback and called it as a dynamic process which serves the purpose of confirming positive behavior by encouraging repetition and correcting negative behavior by encouraging change. So it is a dynamic process. And why is it a dynamic process? Because the learners themselves are learning. They are not in the same place where they were 1 month back or 2 months back. So they are dynamic, they are moving forward. So your feedback also has to be dynamic. And the purpose is to confirm positive behavior so that it is repeated again and again, and correct negative behavior by encouraging change. Now, what is the role of feedback in medical education? In fact, even before CBME came to our country, in the 2013 article, Harden and Laidlaw called feedback as one of the four important principles that lead to more effective learning. So, what are these four important principles? He said, be fair to students. Fair. F stands for feedback. A stands for active learning. I stands for individualizing learning to the specific requirements of the students. You tailor your learning to the individualized specific requirement of the student, and relevant. Keep learning relevant to the needs of the student. So you have feedback, active learning, individualizing and tailoring the learning to the requirement of the students, and keeping your learning and teaching relevant. So these were the four pillars of learning, and out of them feedback was probably first among equals. It was probably the number one, which is playing a critical role in medical education. Feedback provides the impetus for change. As we just discussed earlier, feedback tells a student that this is where I am and this is where I need to be. So there is a requirement for change. So it creates that impetus for change. It gives that motivation for change. If you do not give feedback, mistakes will not be corrected because the student does not know that he's making a mistakes, and there is no feedback. So mistakes can go totally uncorrected. Good performance is not reinforced. He does not know what he is doing good also. So maybe he will not repeat it next time because nobody told him it is good. And clinical competence is either achieved by chance or not at all. So if you do not give feedback, you are leaving things to chance. Feedback, therefore, drives learning. And it is, if you ask me, a connection between learning and assessment. If you have to connect learning and assessment, probably it is a feedback that is connecting them. And this is essential in keeping the students on course in reaching their goal. This is all the more important with the current CBME curriculum, which has been rolled out in our country, where the focus is not on knowledge, but the focus is on skills, focus is on behaviors. So unless you give feedback to the student about the appropriateness or non-appropriateness of his actions, of his behavior, of his skills, he may not be able to achieve that particular outcome or achieve that particular competency. I read this quote somewhere. I liked it. That's why I'm keeping it here. It says, if we are not giving feedback, we are not teaching. We are asking our students to read our minds. So if you don't give feedback, the students are probably working in the dark. They don't know what they are doing. Is it good? Is it bad? And we are asking them to read our minds. So obviously, as a human being, it's impossible to read minds. So feedback has such an important role in medical education. We have seen the critical importance of feedback for medical learning, but even then, it is very, very surprising. Literature is filled with the information to say that students continuously, repeatedly, everywhere report that feedback is not given to them. If it is given very, very infrequently. And when it is given in a very, very ineffective manner. So this is the problem here. It is so important, but it is not given. Even when it is given, it is not effective. Surprisingly, on the other hand, teachers believe that they are providing frequent and adequate feedback. So there is a lot of mismatch. Students feel they are not getting good feedback, they are not getting adequate feedback. While if you ask teachers, they feel they are giving frequent feedback and they are giving adequate feedback. So obviously, there is some issue here, there is some problem here that is to be sorted out. Even when the feedback is given to the students, there is a great gap between the feedback that is given and the information that is received by the learner. So, what the teacher is intending to say and what the student is understanding, there is still a very, very important gap. So obviously, if we make feedback more effective, we'll be able to give what is in our mind. The same thing probably will reach the student. So there is an important case to be made of to make feedback more effective. Why feedback is not so commonly given, and why is it not effective? What are the various barriers to feedback? What's happening here? Why feedback is not given properly? Let us try to understand a few important barriers here. Surprisingly, one of the important barriers is the purpose of the feedback may not be clear to the teacher or learner. So if you tell young faculty that please give feedback to the learner, the purpose is not very clear. What should I say? What is the, I mean, what is the role of this feedback here? What am I supposed to say? So that purpose, how is it going to help the learner? The purpose is not very clear. Very, very frequently, either to the teacher or even to the learner, it's not very clear. Even when the teacher wants to give feedback, they may not be an appropriate time or place for a feedback session, because feedback session is a formal event. It is not that can be done, while walking in the corridor, or you just meet a student for a minute and then you just tell him something. That is not feedback. So they may not be an appropriate time or place for a feedback session, because of which the feedback may not be effective. The teacher may have very minimal or no formal training in giving feedback. Hopefully, things are changing with this faculty development program happening in our country. Uh, the awareness about feedback has increased to some extent, and more teachers are able to understand the importance of feedback, and they are practicing feedback much more better. So obviously this will change, but as of now, the teachers, most of them have very minimum or no formal training in giving feedback. So when there is no formal training, then what happens is the feedback may be given, but it could be very general. You're doing very well, or you're not doing very good. It could be very, very general. And that general feedback may not be helpful to a learner. It may not actually have a real benefit to the learner. His performance may still not improve because of that feedback. Uh, I don't think I need to elaborate on this further. The hierarchical culture of medicine. The teacher is, sage on his stage. He is the ultimate authority, and he has to give information to the student, and the student has to keep his mouth shut. So this sort of culture is, all pervasive in medicine, and this sort of culture is not conducive to a good feedback, because a good feedback has to be interactive. You have to listen to the student also. So culture of medicine hopefully will change, but as of now, the strongly hierarchical nature is not conducive to good feedback. And when it is a hierarchical nature, only the teacher is talking to the student. So most of the times it comes down to finding faults. It comes down to telling them why he is such a useless person, why he is, not aware of anything in the subject. So that sort of, negative experience, where the learner feels that feedback means my performance is going to be criticized. And this, I'm sure all of you, if you introspect, you will come across hundreds of cases where there is a seminar going on of a UG or a PG, and the PG is waiting for a feedback, and the feedback is nothing but, he'll be blasted, he'll be criticized on each and every aspect of his presentation or his performance or his clinical skill. So slowly what happens is the learner starts viewing feedback as a negative experience, and the moment he hears about feedback, he becomes protective, he becomes scared. So that kind of actually creates a barrier to feedback. So what can we do about it? How can we overcome barriers? How can we make feedback more effective? Are there any tips or strategies? Can we do something about it? So let's go across and try and see a few tips how we can make feedback better and more effective. Tip number one: feedback, if it has to be effective, has to be given in a safe and respectful learning environment. When I say safe and respectful learning environment, the student should feel safe. When he is entering a room for a feedback session, he should enter it with confidence. He should not be scared. So that is a prerequisite for an effective feedback. A positive learning climate is the bedrock. And that particular atmosphere in the feedback session has to be based on mutual trust and respect. The student also must feel respected. He also must feel valuable. So only then the feedback is going to be effective. It should be very clear that teachers and learners are both partners in the process of feedback. It is not the teacher giving a one-way dialogue to the student. They are both partners in the process of feedback, where the ultimate goal is to ensure that the student improves. So that is the goal. And both of them, both the student and the teacher, both of them are working towards that goal. So that kind of a feeling, that kind of an environment has to be created. And like I mentioned earlier, it has to be viewed as a two-way conversation. So if you are giving feedback to a student, you should be, preparing to listen also. It should not be, if I have to tell, okay, I need 10 minutes to tell this to the student. No, you have to have an open mind to listen, because that is a very, very important component of feedback. So this is, I think, the most important, and many of the students, literature is full, especially in Indian context, where the student does not get a feeling that the environment is safe and respectful. He feels scared, he feels tensed in that particular environment. So this is a tip number one, but bedrock. You can't go ahead if you have not created a safe and respectful environment for the feedback. Try and see that the feedback is given in a private setting with a considerate tone. It has to be gentle, it has to be supportive. Only then the feedback is going to be more effective. So this is, I cannot stress it more, that this is probably one of the most important foundation on which the other tips are going to be built. Establishing a safe and respectful learning environment. Communicate, tip number 2, communicate goals and objectives for the feedback. So if a student is coming for a feedback session, it has to be planned. You have to inform the learner in advance. Tomorrow, we will be talking about your particular skill of history taking, or particular skill of clinical examination, particular skill of any other skill you're talking about, or particular, if I'm in pharmacology, I'll say your prescription writing skills we will discuss, or your counseling skills we will discuss. So a student has to be told in advance about the feedback session, and agree. If he says yes sir, I will do that, and along with that, can we discuss this also? So those goals and little bit of agenda, some shape has to be given to the feedback. It can't be just out of blue, you just call him and start telling him something. So it has to be communicated well in advance. This will actually also prepare the student mentally before coming for the feedback. Schedule the meeting at a mutually convenient time and private location. The timing has to be convenient so that you have some time, you're not in a hurry, there is no stress that you have to go for some meeting after 10 minutes. So you have to be little more into the game, so that there are minimal distractions. So schedule the meeting at a mutually convenient time and private location where you are not disturbed, because the feedback session has to have some components. So at that time, if somebody is coming, your other resident is coming, or you're getting phone call or whatever, so that takes away from the process of feedback. So try and see that you are not disturbed during this particular time. So when this is done, when the learner is told in advance that okay, we are going to discuss this. So this orientation, this discussion of the goals makes the learner more comfortable and more participative in the process. He is more likely to be participative. It's not going to be one way. So he probably will also talk to you, will also share his concerns or his issues with you freely. So communicate goals and objective in advance, and arrange the meeting at a mutually convenient time and private location. Base feedback on direct observation. This is something which is important, because if the students have to perceive feedback, they should feel that this feedback is credible. The feedback is having some base, some it is not just out of the blue. It has to be credible. And what is credible feedback? Credible feedback is well informed. You are aware actually what happened. So if you are calling your resident regarding a feedback between what he has spoken to a nursing staff or something, if you are not there in that particular time and you say I came to know that you have done this, you have done that, so probably that is not credible feedback, because the information which you have received from a third party may not be fully correct, may not be fully right, and the student knows that you were not there at that moment of time, but you are still giving him some feedback as to why he has done this, why he has not done that. The credibility goes off. So possibly the right person to give feedback is someone who was actually there when it happened. While examination, if he has done something which was not correct or you want to give him feedback, were you there during that examination? Because giving feedback based on what a second or third person has told you, we will come to later why direct observation makes a difference. But it is important that a person who has directly observed that particular event, he gives feedback. So that is credible feedback, and this credible feedback has to come from a trustworthy source. The student should trust you, that you are trustworthy. This was a study done by Bingu et al., who surveyed medicine residents based on history taking or clinical examination or counseling skills, and he found that these trainees, ignored the feedback if they did not believe that the statements were out of first-hand observation. So if those statements were from somebody who actually saw them doing, actually your first-hand observation, they were able to take that feedback much better as compared to somebody who was not there, but he is giving information based on second or third person's, observations. So it is important that you are there, or if you're not there, you should be absolutely clear as to what happened, because you may not be getting the complete information. Make sure that as a teacher, you set a good example as a credible role model. As a teacher, we have to set a good example. If you are, talking to patients, very, very politely, very nicely, you are setting yourself as a good role model. And then when you give feedback about patient interaction, your feedback will have great value because you are a big good role model. So try and see that you are a good role model for the student. Make feedback timely and regular. This timing on the feedback is of utmost importance, and it has been seen that the same kind of feedback, if it was given in time or if it was given after some time, can make a difference. So it has a strong influence uh, as far as the effectiveness is concerned. If a
Sir, kindly unmute, sir. Dr.
Yeah, yeah, I have done that. I have done.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank
am I
you.
audible now?
Yes, sir. Audible, sir. Yes, sir.
So if a behavior needs correction, the teacher must provide feedback as soon as possible after the encounter. So it has to be timely. Of course, it may not be possible to give, the same day or the same hour, but as far as possible, it should be immediately after the encounter. When it happens, the context of the feedback is fresh and clear in the mind. The student knows what you're talking about. You also know what you're talking about. So the memory is fresh in your mind, and you are able to give feedback in a much, much, much better fashion if it is timely and immediately after the encounter. Second thing is, one of the important reasons because of which we give feedback is so that the learner can improve himself. So he has come to you for a pediatric rotation for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and after 3 weeks or 4 weeks, when the rotation is coming to an end, you give them feedback. This is what was done, this is what was not done, and all. And the next day he is going for some other rotation. Then how can he improve himself? How will he get a chance to take remedial action? So what is important is you give feedback timely so that he can take some action to remedy himself and improve his performance. So it's important that you give it timely so that he still has a chance to improve his performance based on the feedback. Regular feedback enables the continued growth of the learner. As we mentioned, feedback is a dynamic process, and as the student is moving towards his goal, your feedback also has to change to make sure that he is in track, he keeps on the road to the goal. So it is important that regularly it is given so that the continued growth of the learner can be ensured. Tip number 5: begin the session with the learner's self-assessment. So when you are starting a feedback session, it is important that you start off with the learner's self-assessment. It is proven in literature that a feedback that was initiated by the learners is more effective than that initiated by teachers. So if the feedback has to start, it must start with first the learner sharing his experiences. Rather than the teacher starting off the feedback, it's important that you ask open-ended questions. How is it going? How was it? Those open-ended questions can be asked so that the student comes out and the session starts off with the learner's self-assessment. This is absolutely crucial. And why is it important? Because there is a possibility that the learner himself will come up with something which you already have in mind. So your job is easy because the learner himself has started that, okay, I feel that this is the issue. You also had the same thing in mind. Now your job is easy because the student himself has brought out. Number one. Number two, if he says, I feel that I was little rude to that particular patient, if he comes out with that, then you take on from there. So what happens is the perception of harshness will be reduced. Straight up, if you call him and say, I think during that so and so you were very rude, then he may become a little defensive, or the feedback will look as though it is very harsh. But if the student himself has brought out, because you have asked him open-ended questions. So if the student himself talks about that particular incident, I think, I was a little rude to that particular this thing, or I feel that I am not good at so and so. Then you start off with the same thing. Yes, I think you are right. I think you are a little rude. You should not have done this. You should not have done that. Then the harshness is going away. Why? Because the student himself has brought out that particular situation. So this is very important, and this will make corrective feedback more acceptable. Secondly, he may bring out something which you also have not thought. You have thought of 5 things to tell during the feedback session. Maybe the student will come up with the sixth one, and suddenly you can use that in your feedback session. So it is win-win both ways. So it's always a very, very good idea to start the session with the learner's self-assessment. We'll come to as to how we start with the learner self-assessment in the next couple of slides. This also helps the learner to develop into a reflective practitioner. As we know in CBME, there is a great stress laid on reflection. You have to reflect on what you've done well, or you have to reflect on what you've not done well. So when you start these things, the learner is slowly developing the practice of reflection. And as you know that throughout the professional life, a practitioner will have to reflect, because there are sometimes issues which do not go well. They may go wrong, or even if they go well, it's always a good idea so that to reflect, what happened, what went well, or what could have been better. So that kind of reflection, so that process, the learner will, right from the early days of his professional career, will start learning. Tip number 6: reinforce positives and provide suggestions to correct negatives. So what's happening is, you tell him his positive aspects, you reinforce, yes, that was very good, that was wonderful, what you did was very good. And if there is something which is negative, you provide suggestions how it can be done better. So acknowledging and appreciating the positive aspects of the learner is very crucial. Many of us assume that positive behaviors do not need to be discussed. I myself have come across very, very senior faculty who strongly feel that if somebody is doing a positive thing, then what is the point of telling him? Because he already knows that it is good. That's why he's doing it. So why should I tell him that he is doing good? It doesn't make any sense. But reinforcing the positive things will provide motivation to the learner to continue it again and again and again, so that it becomes a habit. If you're doing something good, and if somebody tells us, yeah, you're doing very good, so that actually helps us to repeat it again and again. So that's very important. And I don't know how far it is true. I have heard a lot of senior faculty say that if we tell the student that you're doing this aspect very good, they may become very proud, or it can get into their head, or and many such things. But I leave it up to you to think about it. But I personally feel that appreciating the positive aspects of the learner actually go a long way in making feedback more effective. And reinforcing the positive aspects right at the beginning of the feedback session. When you start your feedback session by talking about the positive things, makes the learner more receptive. He feels suddenly more comfortable. He suddenly becomes more confident. So the entire feedback session becomes more effective. He's more receptive to your feedback. This approach also gives confidence to the learner and motivates him to continue with its good practices. So once you try and see, you appreciate somebody that you are doing it very good, and he will do it again and again. He will do it again and again. That's very good. This is what we want, that the positive things should be repeated. So once you start appreciating the positive thing, you will see that it gives him confidence and motivates him to continue them for a much longer time. While giving corrective feedback, so this was positive feedback, and when you're giving corrective feedback, what has not gone well, how to improve, have a friendly body language, be responsive of the learner's reaction. If you're saying something which is corrective, which has to be improved, try and see his body language, how is he taking it, and and make appropriate changes in your language and in your body language to ensure that you are acknowledging the learner's reaction. Base feedback on directly observed performance. I mentioned in the previous slide also, especially if you are giving a corrective feedback, if you are giving him that this is the area where you have to improve, it is important that it is directly observed. Because if it is not directly observed, you may not have all the information. And the credibility of the feedback is likely to suffer. Here, I will just take 2 minutes to speak about Pendleton's feedback as to how the positive and the corrective feedback probably can be given, which we just discussed. Pendleton's feedback is a very commonly used feedback and has been found to be very, very successful, very, very useful. It is based on four, aspects of how to, give a feedback. They are ask, tell, ask, tell. Now, what is ask, tell, ask, tell? The first ask is the teacher asks the student, what did you do well? The teacher is trying to find out what has gone well. So many times the students don't know how to answer because they say, no, I don't know. You say, how, I mean, what are you doing well in your clinics or in your so-and-so? So he said, no, I'm not doing, I'm doing okay or whatever. But you ask him, and he will ask him to come out with something positive. Says, I think I am quite regular in the classes, or I pay attention to the class, whatever. So you you try and get that information. If the student says knows, I don't know what I'm doing well, so try and probe him a little further, so that let him bring out something good, something everyone is doing something good. So try and find out what he's doing well. So ask him. So once he tells you that this is, I feel I am doing good, you describe, yes, I think you're right. This is, I also feel that you are doing this very good. So the teacher tells. And also, if you have noticed something good, you tell, I feel that you are also doing well in that department or in that this thing. Give him those, be generous in your positive comments. When it happens, the learner suddenly feels that my teacher is not only looking for my faults, the teacher is also observing my good things. So suddenly he's more participative. He's more into the feedback process. So you ask, what did you do well? Let him come out with something. You tell, yes, I think you are doing this very good. Bring out 2, 3 more things which you have noticed. And that is the reason I mentioned feedback has to be planned. So if you are planning a feedback, you should have a little bit of noting down somewhere as to what you are trying to say. Then come to the third point. Teacher tries to find out what could be improved. Then you see, oh, that's very good. But do you think there is something you need to do differently? So please understand this particular statement here. We are not saying, please tell me what you're not good at or what you're not doing well. We are talking about Because the moment you say you're not doing good, tell me what you're not doing good, that is a judgment. We are giving him a judgment, but we are not here to give judgment. We are talking about, do you think there is something you should have done differently? So suddenly what is happening is we are talking about alternatives. We are talking about discussion. So the student can say, I think I should have done that differently. So suddenly there is no judgment there. You are looking at options. Maybe that is a better option. So the student will come out with this. And like you mentioned, when he comes out, then it is very, very easy for you to take that statement and go ahead. Yes, I think this you need to improve. It could have been better if you had done this. So suddenly that feedback is no longer judgmental. The student no longer feels bad because he's the one who actually brought it out. And then here in this, if there is any other thing which you have in mind, which the student can do differently, then you come out with this. Yes, another thing which I feel you could do differently. You know, the correct choice of words probably also goes a long way. You're talking at options. You're talking at exploring options. There are 2 3 ways of doing things. This probably is not very good. Probably this is better. This could be even better. So you're looking at options. You're looking at how things can be done differently. So ask, tell, ask, tell. This probably is a very nice template on which we can work on whenever we are giving feedback to the students. For a long time, the feedback sandwich was used in medical education for giving feedback. The feedback sandwich is nothing but the teachers gives first a positive feedback, starts with a positive feedback so that the learner feels okay, he feels comfortable. Give him constructive criticism where he needs to improve, and then you end the feedback session by giving another positive feedback, because you don't want to leave the learner feeling bad. If you just leave him after this, he may come out of your room feeling very bad. Probably you don't want to do that. So you again give a positive aspect, what he is doing very good, and then you know that's when the feedback process is over. But it was used for a long time, but it has been used quite frequently. But it is found that this feedback sandwich is not a very effective way, because the learner can get quite confused. You're starting with a positive thing, ending with a positive thing. Somewhere in between you have a constructive criticism which may even be lost. If somebody tells you you are good, you are bad, you are good, then suddenly you don't know what's happening. Am I good or am I bad? So that particular confusion in the minds was happening, and that is the reason feedback sandwich today is not as preferred as a mode of delivering feedback. Probably when the relationship is very, very young, where he does not know you very well, fresh PG trainee, first week, first 10 days, first 20 days, your relationship is not so strong. So probably that is the time you can use this. But as the relationship becomes more stronger, maybe it's better to go to the Pendleton's feedback. And there is this article which talks about feedback sandwiches affect perceptions but not performance. When you give feedback through a feedback sandwich method, you affect perception. You feel that feedback has been given, but somehow the performance does not change. So that means the feedback was not effective. So that is the reason the feedback sandwich is slowly going out of favor. But I just mentioned it here because whenever you open something, anything, any document on feedback, the feedback sandwich will be there. Tip number 7: use specific neutral language to focus on performance. Be very, very specific. When I say specific, we'll just see what it is. But the most effective feedback is specific. Lack of specificity has repeatedly been identified as a very common weakness of feedback process. So if you are not very, very specific, then your feedback probably will not have any effect. If you say, you are, you're very hardworking, I think you're doing very well, or I think you're not doing very good. You know, that actually doesn't help the student, because he does not know what to make out of it. So it's important that you use precise, descriptive, and neutral wording. So this is very, very important here. Descriptive, precise, and neutral. I'll give a couple of examples here. Suppose if you say, um, uh, when you are taking, I think in your patient encounters, you are looking very uninterested, or you say you seem to be very short tempered. He does not know what is happening. So, but you have to give him, or positive. You say you are very empathetic. So he does not know. So give him specific, uninterested. I think that when the patient was giving you history, you are looking at your mobile phone, or you are writing in your case sheet. At that time, I think the patient thought that you were not paying much attention. So then you have used specific language. Then you know, okay, that's why I feel that I was looking not interested. No, he will change. Or if you say, when the patient was giving you his history, about past history or cancer or something, you felt very empathetic. I saw that your expressions changed. On that old man, you put a hand on his shoulder and you comforted him. Then you are giving him specific things which he did well. So that is the time thus feedback is actually entering his head and is going to be effective. Feedback, absolutely important. Feedback has to be actionable and describe it. It has to be actionable. If I say you are very lazy, what do I do out of it? But it has to be actionable. I say, I have seen that you always come at 9:30. I also see that when everybody is doing that, you are not doing that. So you are giving him some behavior, you're describing him some behavior, so that he can take some actions. So keep your feedback on actually things which are actionable, which describe behavior, which can be changed, rather than personality. If you say, I feel that you are very sarcastic, you are actually giving a judgment, you are describing his personality. So how can he change? You give him that information. I feel that you are a constant complainer. How can he change? So this is a personality. Give him some feedback, some actionable thing, so that he can change, because that is the main aim of feedback. If you've just given him saying that in pharmacology, if I say your prescription skill writing is very bad, what does he make out of it? You give him specific things. I have seen that in your prescriptions you are not using capital letters, or you are not using drugs which are in the national list of essential medicines, or you are using brand names which should not be there. You are giving him things. Now he knows, okay, this is how I have to change, rather than giving him one blanket thing about you're doing well or doing bad, or those sort of things. The process, absolutely, this particular statement, the process has to help the learner and not provide a platform for the facilitator to promote their knowledge, superiority, or power. This is something I have seen in hundreds of seminar rooms, where the faculty is sitting, the student, PG student, is giving a seminar, and finally it boils down to the faculty showing off their knowledge, showing off their superior power. You have not told this, you have not told that, and they are competing amongst each other to show off their knowledge. So that is not feedback to the student. That is not going to help him. That is not an effective feedback. So that is very, very important. Giving feedback is not for us to show off our knowledge. It has to be with the aim of improving the learner. Tip number 8, confirm the learner's understanding and facilitate acceptance. Once you have given him this feedback, you have given him corrective feedback, it could be loaded with emotions, especially when you're telling him that this is not correct, or you should do this better, or whatever. It could be loaded with emotions. He may get a little shock or he may feel bad. A lot of emotions are involved. After all, we are dealing with human beings. Don't underestimate the emotional impact of feedback that is perceived as negative. Because if the learner is emotionally distressed, this is a great barrier and the feedback will not be accepted. So please be aware, please be totally sensitive to the learner's emotions. Acknowledge and explore the emotional reaction. So you look for his reactions. When you give him corrective feedback, try and see what he feels. Try and support him. And like I just mentioned, be supportive and invite the learner to ask any questions. What do you feel? Finally, when your feedback is given, make sure that the feedback is understood and clearly. The ECO model has come from the psychology, which talks about how to facilitate acceptance of feedback. It is just nothing. It talks about ECO. First is about emotions. You see how is he taking your feedback. Then you talk about content. You say, I'm telling you this because I feel that if you do this, if you do that, if you do that, then you come to outcome. This is going to be better for you, or this is what is needed. So the emotion, content, and outcome is, I am not gone into details, and I invite the people who are interested to just go back and read about it. This will probably help the learner to accept corrective feedback better. Tip number 9, conclude with an action plan. When you are concluding your feedback session, there has to be an action plan for improvement. It is not sufficient to just give feedback and the student goes away. There has to be a plan. The learner can generate a plan for improvement and you make suggestions. So you say, okay, so what do you think you need to do? What do you think you should do for the next 15 days, 20 days? So he comes out with an action plan. And when the action plan is there, you make some suggestions and modifications as required. Summarize the meeting again by repeating the learner's areas of strength and what is our plan. Set up a time for a follow-up meeting. It's okay. So we'll meet again after 1 month so that we can see how much progress we have made. So that kind of agreed plan can be there. Once everything is done, the student has gone away, the plan is also done. As a faculty, what you should do? You have to reflect on your feedback skills. You think about, okay, how did this feedback session go? How was it? What was good in this feedback session? What to change next time when another student comes, probably I should do this better. So that you have to reflect. What new strategies can I use in the next session? Because despite the best preparation, you may use all tips, but all feedback sessions cannot go perfectly. The learner may be defensive. He may not accept what you're trying to say. He may feel that what you're saying maybe is not correct. Or he'll say, I did this because the problem was somewhere else. He will, blame somebody else. So those things will happen. And you are, trying to see how best you can do that. So when you reflect back, you could see that, okay, next time when the learner becomes defensive, maybe I can do this in this fashion. So reflection will actually keep on improving your feedback skills. Every successful feedback session will benefit from the process of reflection, so that future meetings also turn out very well. Making reflection a part of every feedback encounter will improve the teacher's skills and giving feedback. So all teachers who are giving feedback must reflect on their feedback sessions. So after these tips, I'll just take a couple of minutes here just to highlight a few things. Food for thought I have mentioned. Can students self-assess? If the students do not get feedback, what do? They have to assess themselves. What am I good at? What am I not doing well? So can the student self-assess? That's a question we have to ask. Literature has shown very, very clearly that human beings are not very good at self-assessment. We are very inconsistent. If if I have to find out my own strengths and weaknesses, I may not be accurate. We are not very good at self-assessment. Especially if you talk about students, high performers tend to underestimate themselves, while more inexperienced performers overestimate their performance. I'm sure all of us know when we were in our MBBS students, the toppers used to say, I've not read anything, I don't know anything. But others used to feel, we know everything. So the self-assessment is not accurate. Hence, self-assessment on its own cannot be relied upon to define the learning needs of the students. We have to give them feedback. They cannot self-assess. Coming to this important question, is displaying the performance or marks of the students a feedback? We have an exam, we create it.
Sir, kindly unmute, sir.
Yeah, I've done that. So is displaying the performance or of the students a type of feedback? Is it a feedback? Because we do it all the time. But no, it is not feedback. Why is it not feedback? No, are we not saying you've failed or you've done well, or in the practical, there are 5 heads. In this head, you've got less marks, so you have to improve there. Is it not a type of feedback? I've seen a lot of teachers ask me this question. But displaying marks is just providing information. You are giving them information. Of course, I agree. You are giving the information that you've done well, you've not done well. This is the section you've not done well. This section you've not done well, and this section you've done well. But it's not feedback. Why? Because for information to become feedback, it has to be actionable. The student should know what actions should I take. If you just display marks, you are giving him information. I agree. But what action should he do? How can he improve himself? That is missing. So it is probably not a correct way to give feedback. If you are laying out marks, you actually maybe have a discussion with the students as to why I have given less marks to such questions. This question was looking for this. If you were to answer this question, I was actually looking for these things here. If the question is answered well, if you write all these things, then it's a good answer. If you don't write these things, this answer is poor. Then I will not give this many marks. I will just give 2 marks. Just give 3 marks. So when you give that information, then of course it becomes feedback. Why? Because you are making it actionable. Now the students know what to do. So information which is actionable becomes a feedback. Provide a roadmap for learning development. You provide suggestions, how to build your strengths, how to address your weakness. When you do this, then only it is a feedback. Just displaying marks on the notice board is probably not a effective feedback. How much is the right amount of feedback? How much should we give them? It is seen that increasing the amount of feedback can reduce the effect of feedback, because the students may become overwhelmed. If you give them too much information, they will not know which information is important, and probably they will miss out crucial information, and maybe they even become totally disengaged from the feedback process. I have seen in many institutes where many faculty give feedback, and the feedback goes on for hours together. And when you give it for hours together, the student comes out totally overwhelmed, and finally, it's not effective. So we have to give better feedback and not more feedback. What is the role of written feedback? Should I give something in writing to the student? There is evidence in the literature that informal verbal feedback is more important than formal written feedback. Why is it so? Because informal verbal feedback can be given, like I mentioned, timely, immediately after the behavior encounter. If you have to give a formal written feedback, you will take probably more time, and the effect is totally lost. So formal written feedback you may give if you want, but the aim of the written feedback is to aid reflection at a later date. If somebody was to go back and see, okay, what was my feedback, maybe he can see. But immediately to change the behavior, there is no requirement of written feedback. The informal feedback, timely feedback is more useful. Is it most effective to give feedback to individuals alone or a group setting? The 10 people who are there in that particular clinical posting or whatever. So should I call all of them in a group, or should I call one by one and give them feedback? It has been seen that there are pros and cons to both. What are the pros? If you call 10 people and give feedback, the students can receive a wide range of feedback. You'll say, student number X, I think you should do this or whatever. Student number Y, probably so and so. So all the students are getting a wide range of feedback. They can have an insight into a wide variety of perspectives. So they are more aware, because something which is connected to somebody, some other student, this student is also listening. So maybe it will improve him also. So he will get a wide range of feedback. The cons, there is reduced control over content and volume of feedback. You do not know where to stop, but you do not know where to end, because there are 10 people and there are hundreds of feedbacks to be given. There is a risk of negative emotional impact. If you give corrective feedback, in a sort of not so polite manner or not so supportive or understanding manner, it may have a negative impact. He will feel embarrassed in front of his colleagues. So pros and cons both are there. So some studies do feel that learners might prefer group feedback over individual feedback. Probably as students, we all felt group feedback. If if when I was a student, if I was called alone to the HOD's room, probably I was more scared. But if 10 people are going, I'll be more comfortable. So probably the learners prefer group feedback over individual feedback. Some studies have shown. But finally, the teacher must decide which one to use depending on the context. If you feel that this is probably better achieved in group setting, maybe you can go ahead and do that. Conclusion: feedback serves to guide learning. It reinforces desirable actions. It identifies areas of improvement and it promotes reflection. So feedback is the bedrock of medical education. However, it is a double-edged sword, and if not handled correctly, can leave a learner bruised, demoralized, with a shattered confidence. So this is something which we have to, guard against. Effective feedback brings to light the gap between the current performance and the intended goal, so that the students know what to do to reach from here to here and how to overcome these discrepancies. Ultimately, feedback is about communication. It is about communication. The key skills are to listen and ask, not just to tell and provide solutions. So the aim is not to tell and give him solutions. The aim is to listen. The aim is to ask. I conclude by giving you a message by Mahatma Gandhi, who said, whatever your message, give it with love. Otherwise, both the message and the messenger will be rejected. Thank you very much.